So a little indie horror game called Bendy and the Ink Machine has been an internet hit for months now, and although I'm a little late to the party, I've decided to break this game down to understand why it got so popular in the first place. And to do that, I've decided to analyze every chapter of this game individually, because each plays very differently. Yet in the process of analyzing the first chapter, I noticed that recently, the Meatly, the team behind Bendy and the Ink Machine, made some decisions in a recent update which are a detriment to the overall experience of Chapter 1. Which at surface level, this doesn't quite make sense, because all that seems to have changed to veterans is a graphical update and the addition of 2 more rooms. To answer why this is so detrimental, we need to relive the experience step by step through the eyes of a new player to see what went wrong. Let's begin. The game opens with a cryptic letter upon sinister music, and a brief note of the controls before dropping you into an unknown world with your first objective, find the Ink Machine. With one way to go and an ever-so-friendly welcome sign ahead, the player treads forward. From there, a flickering light from an old projector naturally lures players from their dark surroundings. Walking straight out creates a natural wall, which brings the player as close to the light as possible. This also brings our player face to face with the titular Bendy. With nothing to do here, the light yet again naturally induces the player to turn around toward it. Accidentally pointing at it makes the projector glow, showing that it can be interacted with. This encounter may seem meaningless, but it teaches the player how interactable objects react when pointed at, and how close players need to be to interact with said objects. Knowledge that will come in handy just a few moments later. When turned around, light is again used along with a dark black contrast to lure the player to the left, which presents a cryptic message and a one-way path down a narrow hallway. So far, every light and every object in this game has been shown to be meticulously placed to secretly guide the player in the right direction. However, here is where things start falling a bit apart, because for the first time, the player sees a light behind a door. And, as with every lure so far, light points to the direction you should go. When the player goes to interact with the door, it will make a sound, but it won't open. Same with the door without a light. This presents the player with the idea that regardless of if there is a light behind them, these doors will not open. Then the next objective leads them to turn around to see a pitch black way they came from, and doors that won't open, and then a path to the right. This path leads the player face to face with the door, which most players will try to open, yet to no avail. This encounter then solidifies the message, doors cannot be opened. Light guides them to the right into a scare, then left into this horrifying room. There is a door here, but this chair and lack of light both obstructs it and deters the player from opening it. They turn around, and light guides them to the break room, where the main part of the chapter begins, which consists of finding 6 various items to power the Ink Machine. Now, item hunts in games are quite controversial among the gaming community, but no one seems to have a problem with them when the items are placed in clever locations that players are led to by cues in the level design. However, Chapter 1 does not do this. Chapter 1 instead randomizes the location of the items, with 5 or more different places each item can be. And this would be fine and all, but only if the player was still aided by the level design in every location. On top of this, since item placement is randomized each time, it causes differing opinions on the chapter, because most players will unknowingly receive a different experience. There seems to be no reason to randomize item placement other than variation in repeated playthroughs, but no one is going to play through the game again if they initially had a flawed experience. Finally, in this randomized hunt, comes the biggest flaw of the update, being the 2 added rooms. See, in the initial version of the game, you would search through the previous rooms to find the randomized items, then proceed to the final section of the chapter with no issue. However, in the update, when you return to the opening room, you see that a previously closed door has now been opened slightly. If you approach the door and interact with it, you open the door fully, which leads you to a new room containing no required items. This teaches the player 2 things. First, being that closed doors cannot be opened unless they are partially opened, and second, that rooms behind doors do not contain necessary items. Well, the issue with this logic is there is about a 67% chance that a required item will be in the second new room, a room which is only accessible through a closed door, which, if it wasn't enough that the game taught you cannot open closed doors unless they are partially opened, and that no required items would be behind them, the player already tried opening this specific door and it was locked. So there is a 67% chance the game will ask of you something that you have been taught as a player is impossible. Before the update, there was a 0% chance of this item appearing in this room because this room did not exist. This error by the Meatly was probably caused by them being in the mindset that players knew that some doors can be opened because they were currently developing Chapter 3. Regardless of the reasoning, I believe it should be fixed since the Meatly is obviously no stranger to updating older chapters. The rest of the chapter isn't too notable from a gameplay perspective, other than it teaches you about ink floors, ink valves, and how to use the axe, which are all mechanics built upon in later chapters, but here they are just taught with no choice or skill required by the player to complete the tasks. Overall, did one mistake make me hate this chapter? No, I don't think you can fully hate anything in this medium. Bendy sets a unique world and premise, along with some initial clever design choices which teach players without words. And although flawed, Chapter 1 brought us into this mysterious world full of terror, mystery, and magic. And as the opening chapter, wasn't it its goal? To create a new world to escape in. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, consider subscribing by clicking my logo here to be notified of when the next chapter's analysis releases, and an upcoming analysis of why this game, among others, became so popular on the internet. Regardless of your choice, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all next week.